Welcome to the Lighthouse Financial Advisors Money Over 50 podcast with Dallas Davison and Michael Hogue. This information is general in nature and does not take into account your objectives, financial situation, or needs. Therefore, you should consider whether the information is appropriate for you and your personal circumstances. If you require personal advice, please contact Lighthouse Financial Advisors. Here are your hosts, Dallas Davison and Michael Hogue.
Welcome to Money Over 50. Today we are talking about how investing is the worst form of retirement planning, excepting for all others. Michael, what you talking about?
Famous Churchill quote, isn't it? It's based on a famous Churchill quote.
You know I'm a big fan of Winston Churchill.
I know. So for the listeners, Dallas named his firstborn son after Winston Churchill. Yeah. Winston Davison III.
It isn't actually the third, but it sounds pretty cool.
It sounds like it should be the third. Famous. You tell.
Yeah. So
what is the quote?
The quote. They were talking about different forms of government, and I know you've actually got the date there. It's very, very
well. Wikipedia just told me.
Yeah. So it was a speech that Winston Churchill made in the House of Commons on the 11th of November 1947. Talking about different forms of government, and he made the statement that democracy is the worst form of government ever invented, excepting for all others. And what he meant by that, of course, is that democracy seems terrible. If you talk to the average voter in the street, you're disappointed by their lack of knowledge about political systems and policy and all these sorts of things. And so it always seems like there's got to be a better way to govern the country than via democracy, until you think the alternatives are, either communism or a totalitarian government.
Well, I just thought of a story. I'd heard, and I don't know when this happened, but I'd heard that the Russian Minister for Milk visited the United Kingdom and said, "Who is the Minister for Milk? And who is in charge of getting all the milk to the different stores?" And they said, "What?" It just gets there through the free market. And this guy, the Russian Minister for Milk, could not get his head around how milk got into corner stores and got into supermarkets and how it was priced and all of those types of things, and how supply, he just couldn't work out from the supply side how that all happened. Because obviously from what he was used to, it was completely different. It was a top-down control.
And that's the point that Churchill was making there, was that democracy sounds terrible because half of, as every sort of average has to work that way, half of people are on average less intelligent than the other half. So if there was some magical way for everyone to just make really good decisions all the time, then we could rely on that. But democracy seems terrible because everyone's vote counts the same. And again, if you come from another form of government system, you go, it seems really inefficient to have everyone vote, every few years and all these sorts of things. But what you find is that democracy is the only system that doesn't lend itself to some tyrant getting in charge and absolutely wrecking everything. So you have a bottom-up approach where everyone votes, and then over time, if that government doesn't do a good job, they get voted out and all the rest of it. And so that's kind of, we're digressing massively here, but the point he was making is that if there was, yes, there are all these flaws and there are all these things that we wish we could avoid about democracy, but we can't. Because if we try and avoid those flaws, we try and avoid those issues, we're getting away from democracy. We're getting into something which is going to be much worse.
Yes.
And so now, putting all that aside, what are you talking about when you say that investing is the worst form of retirement planning, except for all others?
So what I'm talking about with investing, I'm using the broad term here that you hear people talk about, and what they're talking about when they say investing most of the time, they're talking about things that go up and down.
Yes.
So they're talking about companies,
growth assets,
shares, those types of things. So that's what I'm talking about with investing. What you hear time and time again is that the closer someone thinks they are to retirement, the less investments that they think they need to have, and the more term deposits. Yes, I'll use term deposits here as opposed to cash, because people understand that. But And we're talking about, I mean, it doesn't have to be their superannuation fund, but the example here I'm going to use is people's superannuation. That's where most of their money in Australia obviously ends up in as they approach retirement. So people naturally assume the dragon they have to fight is the up and down dragon. So they and look, I'm going to get on my soapbox right now. Our bloody industry has been terrible for this because we have fed people. I say we haven't personally, but our industry is terrible for trying to tell people, hey, we can get you great returns with no volatility.
Yeah, that's right.
What we say to people is, hey, we can get very good returns. You need to accept volatility because volatility is a naturally occurring thing. I don't walk into Woolworths and expect the price of bananas. There we go. I'm talking about bananas again.
There's your story.
I don't expect the price of bananas to be the same all the time. I know if a cyclone comes through Tully, the price of bananas are going to go up. Look, the price of everything, the price of absolutely everything moves.
Yes.
Like everything around us, the price is moving all the time. For some reason, the media and the industry and all that have come up with this ridiculous thing to say that the value of your, or the price of your superannuation fund shouldn't move up and down.
That's right.
So I'll jump off that.
It's a good point, because what you're talking about there, and even the broad terms of when we say investing, no one ever thinks about the fact that if you're investing, if you put money into a term deposit, the return that you get on that, the interest rate that you get goes up and down over time as well.
It does.
There is literally nothing that stays the same. So
that's right.
10 years ago, you got much higher interest rates than you do
Look,
now.
I think the interest rate fluctuates like two extremes. So from a 6% interest rate to a 2% interest rate is a massive percentage shift. Whereas if you're looking at the returns of our leading companies in Australia and the world over time, they have a much more narrow range over time. Day to day, month to month, hour to hour, year to year. They could be. There's a vast different range. But I guess what I thought of this is that it's a little bit like democracy. So it is the only alternative for 97% of the population. So what I mean by that is that 97% of the population has to accept, to achieve their goals, that they're going to have to accept some form of volatility in their superannuation fund. In fact, quite a bit of volatility, and it's all based on the rate of return that they require. So it is, investing is the worst form of retirement planning, excepting for all others, because we don't know of any other way that works.
And this is exactly the point that you're making, is that if someone's got $500,000 in super and comes in to see us at 55, and we say, look, this is the rate of return that you need to achieve in order to retire in 10 years' time, which is what you've said you want.
Yes.
No one wants volatility for no reason. No one's going, geez, I really just want that to go up and down.
Yes.
It's really based on the fact that we need this rate of return. These are the types of assets that you need to be invested into in order to achieve that rate of return. With that is going to come this volatility. So invariably, when we say that, and many times people say, I don't really want to I don't want to invest that money in shares, and we think, well, we don't really want to either. It's just the facts are that we need to.
If we could put everyone's money into a guaranteed rate of return of 8% in a term deposit every year, then and if that was going to
be guaranteed,
continue into perpetuity, we would say that sounds fantastic. That does not exist.
But if someone tells you that they can get you an 8% guaranteed return without any volatility, I got a bridge to sell you.
Run. Yes, that's right. So look, I mean, let's use an example. So it is common for people to say, I want to invest a lot more conservatively. And let's assume for a minute that by doing that, and in this case, you wouldn't even get rid of volatility altogether. You would just dilute volatility. if you actually managed to get a 4% rate of return each year on your superannuation, and you had $500,000 at age 55, and you were a couple and you're earning $75,000 each, so you had employer contributions going in at 9.5% of that amount. What would actually happen is that you would get to age 65, you'd hit about $860,000 of superannuation balance. And most people, I guess at surface value, would think that's not too bad. However, the day that you stop work is the day that you actually put your money to work and it gets dressed and goes to work for you. In most cases, look, in this case, this amount of money of $860,000 working part-time, because a 4% rate of return on that is $34,000 for the year. So forget about the sum of money that you retire with in this case, $860,000. It's what that money is going to make you. So it's only making you $34,000 a year. Hey, the average of our clients spend about $70,000 a year in retirement. So basically, what's happening here is that your money is making it's only pulling its weight to half of what your living expenses are.
So half of your income's coming from the return, and half is coming from that capital.
Out of it. Half is coming out of it. So look, if I fast forward to age 70, then by that stage, your $860,000 has dropped to $643,000. 4% rate of return on that is $25,000. So your money, where it was making $34,000 of return for you, is only making $25,000. Hey, guess what? The cost of everything's gone up. You now have to take $81,000 out of your superannuation to give you the same life that $70,000 afforded you just 5 years before when you retired.
That's right.
At age 65. So, look, we extrapolate that out. By age 78, you're out of money completely. So you've run out of money. So when we show people these figures, which we do when we first meet with them, because every single person, and I don't blame them for thinking this. Every single person thinks, I want less volatility, and I want my money to be safe and secure.
And as you said, as an industry, we have fed a lot of that. And, even if you think about I won't get you onto your bandwagon about target dated investment options within super, but the concept that within your superannuation fund, for a lot of people, the default option that you'll be invested into becomes more and more conservative as you get older. And so, if you're 10 years out from retirement for most people, your super fund, in some cases, is automatically moving you into more conservative mix of more cash, less investing in growth assets, at precisely the time when you really need to be ramping that up and growing it as much as possible. So that's kind of where you're talking about the fighting the wrong dragon and pandering to that fear of, well, what if my balance goes up and down? When really the fear should be, am I going to outlive my money, or is my money going to outlive me? And that's all that matters, really. So we know, we live in this industry, of course, and we know that if you're diversified enough, even in these growth companies, so every single drop throughout history, every time the price has gone down, it's recovered and grown to a new high. So at no point in time has the price of a broad, diversified group of our top companies in Australia and the top companies around the world, at no point in time has that ever dropped away to zero. There's no point in time has that ever dropped away and stayed there. It's dropped away, it's recovered all the way through history and then grown to new highs. So look, volatility, again, not to digress too much, but people talk about risk, and what they're talking about really is volatility. Volatility is the short-term, temporary movement of price down, but it can be up as well. So volatility is a two-way street. That's right.
People say risk. Now risk is the chance of permanent loss. So what most people are talking about when they say risk, they're actually talking about volatility.
That's right.
And it's and regardless of that, it's the wrong dragon to fight. So the dragon that they need to fight is the fact that they're at least one of them is going to live 30 years in retirement. and that prices are going to go up at the rate of about 2 to 3% a year.
Yep.
So that
your income needs going up every year.
Needs to go up.
So your return, your retirement savings needs to be either growing every year or at least able to keep pace with that increased income needs.
That's right.
And that's I guess the way that we structure these conversations with people when they meet with us is that, you know, as you said, it's easy to digress and talk about being diversified and how you should actually then be invested in growth assets and the things that you really do need to be aware of or take note of or to minimise risk of. But at the very start of this, it's that point that you've made there of, well, what's the alternative here? If someone doesn't want to be invested in growth assets and they don't have, unless they're coming in with $5 million in retirement savings, they don't have an alternative. So if people are saying, I don't want to be invested, okay, that's great. What are you proposing?
Yeah, so if someone sits back and says logically, look, I just cannot handle I can understand it conceptually, but I cannot handle the price movement up and down. Yeah. Look, I'm happy to get to $860,000. Like, what I'm aware of is that I'll have to really, really rein in my expenses and only spend $35,000 or $40,000 a year, or
that's right.
to make that money last. Yeah. I'm completely happy with that because they've actually made a conscious decision. That's right. I think where I feel sorry for people that haven't looked at it yet is that people have been telling them that they can they should be invested in safe, secure investments, but they actually really don't understand the ramifications of that. And the ramifications are that on average, just 10 to 12 years into their retirement, they'll be completely out of money.
And that's exactly right. This is actually a conversation that we have with people. It's not to try and be sarcastic or to be smart, but you go, if you don't want to invest any of your money and you want that sitting in term deposits in your super fund and you're going to get a 2% or a 4% or whatever rate, a very low rate of return here, you've got three options really. You can either, you probably need to find another $20,000 or $30,000 a year to put into your superannuation fund out of your own cash flow. Most people don't want to do that because that $30,000 is the fun stuff, is what they're enjoying their life based on. Or you can work a lot longer, which most people don't want to do. The whole point of planning for retirement is getting in a position where you can retire when you want to and if you want to. Or the other alternative we say to people is you've got to die earlier. Yeah. And so most people don't want to do that either.
Most people don't.
So, like we said, it's not a matter of saying, well, if you don't do this, there's other ways around it. There is other ways around it, but for most people, they're not willing to pay the price or to accept that trade-off of, okay, well, you have to save, you have to basically spend $30,000 less a year now and put that into super. And then when you're retired, you also need to spend less money so that you're actually spending less of your capital base every year.
That's right.
And or you need to accept that you are going to run out of money earlier.
Yes, that's right.
And so it's as you said about fighting the wrong dragon. If we worry about is my super balance 500,000 now or 550 or 450 or whatever the case may be, for most people, when you break this down, that's really they're not worried about is my super balance 500 or 600 or 400 right now.
No.
They're worried about, will I have enough money to live the life I want in retirement? Or will I have to move in with my kids at 78 because I can't afford, I've got to sell my house to live on? Yeah. Or, am I going to be able to afford all of my medical needs when I'm older? Am I going to be able to travel in my early years of retirement? Those are all the things that people, I think, really care about. It's just that we have, as an industry and across our media, really pandered to that fear of volatility is the thing to be scared of.
Yeah, that's right. So as an alternative, look, just to change one of those parameters here. So the same example. Yep. Someone at age 55. Yep. A couple, let's assume, $500,000 in their superannuation fund. Same income, so $150,000 combined. Yep. And their employer's paying in 9.5%. Yep. If they invested that money such that they were able to get an 8% rate of return each year, as opposed to the 4% that we used initially, fast forward 10 years' time, so they would now have $1,152,000.
Yeah, so just under $300,000 better off.
And that's an 8%. Just to be clear, it's an 8% before tax return. So we've assumed 15%, which is the superannuation tax rate, comes out of that, which lowers the net rate of return to 6.8%. So that rate of return gets them to $1,152,000 as opposed to $860,000.
Yep.
Now, what's more important about that though is that they're getting now let's assume an 8% average rate of return on a bigger number as opposed to a 4% average rate of return on a smaller number.
Yep.
So in example A, the person ended up with $860,000. They got a 4% rate of return on that. Was $34,000 a year.
Yep.
In example B, same inputs except for the rate of return is increased from 4% to 8%.
Yep.
They end up with $1,152,000. They get an 8% rate of return on that.
Yep.
That's $92,000 of earnings.
Yep.
So their money is working a lot harder.
Yep.
They take $70,000.
Yep.
Hey, they're not going backwards; they're going forwards.
Yep.
So effectively, they got $92,000 of return. They've taken $70,000 as a tax-free income.
Yep.
In this situation, what has stayed inside their fund has been $22,000 of that overall return.
Yep.
So that's an ideal scenario because we know that next year they actually have to take a bit more income.
Yep.
Because on
price
average, price of everything goes up. So now they've put an extra $22,000 back into their fund.
Yep.
For that second year of their retirement. So rate of return in dollars goes up from $92,000 to almost $94,000.
Yep.
And they take $72,000 from that as an income. So look, they can do that into perpetuity.
Yep.
If I run the numbers on this, you go way down to age 95. They've still got quite a healthy capital base left at that point in time.
Yep.
And they've indexed their income up to $170,000 at that point in time.
Yeah.
So it's a vastly different result from scenario A.
Yeah.
And the only input that I changed
is
was the rate of return. Now in accepting that rate of return or chasing that 8% rate of return, they do have to accept sometimes significant volatility.
Yep.
So
but that's, I guess, the point there is that 8% rate of return we're talking about, that is an average taking into account.
It's an average. It builds in that volatility. So if we go back to 2008, 2009, that investment strategy, we won't go into the details of that investment strategy, but let's just assume it's broadly invested across the leading companies in Australia and in the world. Look, the price of those investments fell temporarily some 57% in 2009, or bottoming out in 2009. Like you said, great point that you made before there, Dallas, that average rate of return takes into account that. So
it's not 8% every other year and then occasionally it's a drop of 57%.
I mean, leading up to that 57% drop, I remember I was in the industry at that point in time, of course, 2004, 2005, 2006 and 2007 all had huge returns. Don't quote me on the exact returns there, but I mean they average somewhere in this vicinity of about 20% positive for those. So things grew too fast. They pulled back to a position, dropping 57%, where they were too low, and very quickly after that they found what most would have considered fair value. So it didn't fully recover. But what I think is dangerous for people to do is to measure extremes. So people often measure the very top and they measure the very bottom and they say, oh my God, it's 57%. If you actually measured it over a period of a couple of years, it wasn't anything like that extremity.
Well, this ties into, I know we recorded a podcast about this previously, about your investing time horizon. And this is what, as an industry, we have not done a good job of explaining, is that if you're 55 and you want to retire in 10 years' time, yes, investing in more growth assets. If you get an 8% return versus 4%, you're about $300,000 better off at age 65. Yep. But it's not a 10-year window you're looking at. You don't get to age 65 and then go, okay, both sides of the equation here, they then get the same return there from there onwards. Yep. If you're retiring at 65, as you said, as a couple, on average, one of you will need to draw an income for another 30 years. So even though we're talking about 10 years of working life, it's really 40 years that you need that money to be working for you.
Look, that's a fantastic point because everyone's fixated on the day that they retire.
Yeah.
And what I hear from a lot of people is, what if there's another global financial crisis when I retire? Yeah. What if there's this? That doesn't matter.
No.
Because when you retire, you don't cash everything out.
That's right.
You take, on average, 5, 6, 7% of the balance.
Yep.
And you live off that for 1 year. And even though your money has your money on paper, your
super balance,
the price of I say the price, not the value.
Yeah.
I'm very careful to do that because the value of the top 200 companies in Australia and the largest 1,500 companies in the world, I can tell you, hasn't fallen 57%. The price has fallen.
Yeah.
They still have the same amount of supermarkets and
banks
and other assets and things like that. So the price has fallen temporarily, but you don't take. I mean, you just don't cash out all of that at that point in time.
That's
you just take a snippet of that, live off that for a year, and then by the time you take next year's income, things have improved generally.
Yeah. I think that the analogy I use a lot here with my clients talking about, if you've got $500,000, most people can understand the concept of this compounding effect over time. So if you've got a $500,000 home loan and you're paying a 5% interest rate on that, it's $25,000 of interest every year. If you only pay $20,000 towards that loan, every year your loan is getting higher and higher.
Yes.
You're getting yourself in a position for much more pain in the future.
Yes.
Whereas if you pay $30,000 a year off that, it doesn't seem like a huge amount. It's only $10,000, and it doesn't seem like it would make a huge difference. But by doing that, you're getting $5,000 paid off the principal of that loan.
Yep.
So you keep making your $30,000 a year. Your interest on that every year is going down slightly.
Yes.
Based purely on the fact that there's a lower loan balance, there's a lower interest every year. More and more of your $30,000 loan repayment is going towards the principal, and you can see that over time. That's a nice curving slope down to pay your loan off completely in full.
Yep.
Whereas if you don't pay as much as what the interest is, you're in for a world of pain because that loan just keeps getting higher. The interest bill every year keeps getting higher and higher, and you're playing more and more catch up and getting more and more behind. The same thing applies with your retirement savings. If you, in that first year of retirement, if you are spending more than the return that you get on that money, you are in for a world of pain at some stage in the future. There's no magic to that. The power of compounding is working against you, not for you.
But I think great analogy because people understand that analogy. They understand mortgages. They understand repayments. They understand the power of actually paying it off versus only paying half of the interest. And the interest getting added to the loan balance. It becomes progressively worse really quickly. And when you're paying the $30,000 and some of that principal is coming down, it becomes progressively better really, really quickly.
That's right.
So you're right. I mean, in scenario A, a lower balance because you got a lower return. Because this person wanted safe, secure. I say has been the opposite of what they wanted. They haven't had a safe, secure retirement at all because they've run out of money 13 years into their retirement.
And this is where it's dangerous, is that in that first year, for example, if they retired with $860,000, they've spent 70, their money's returned 35. At the end of that first year, they've still got $824,000. And they feel like, oh, well, that's all right. I had 860, now I got 824. I've still got a fair bit. It takes 5 to 10 years before you really start to see the effect of, hang on, this is heading in the wrong direction. This isn't going to be sustainable for all of my retirement.
Yeah, that's right.
And that's kind of, as I say, with a home loan where everyone's had that experience where in the early days when your loan is much higher, it feels like for the first 2, 3, 4, 5 years, you just think, I'm not getting through this at all. This is going nowhere.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you start to get into it a bit, and then it becomes more and more, you can really see where you're going there. The same thing happens on the other side of that. With that, if you're not getting the return you need, you don't have the capital base you need, in those early years, you don't really feel the pain. It's like the frog in the boiling pot of water. There you go, mate. There's another good story. It's a complete urban myth that if you put it doesn't actually isn't true, but it's a good analogy of if you put a frog in a pot of water and you slowly boil the water, apparently the frog will just stay there until it boils to death.
Yeah, sure.
If you take a frog and you boil the water first, and then you go to throw the frog in, the frog will jump straight out. It's too hot. I'm not doing that. This is the analogy I'd use there is that. If you retire, if you haven't worked your money hard enough in that last 10 years before you retire, and you're not working that money hard enough when you do retire, you are the frog in the water that's slowly boiling every year, and you don't notice it because the change isn't so great, but over time, you're going to boil to death.
Yeah, look, that's another good analogy. I can't believe, who the hell would put a frog in
I know.
Who are these sick people that are putting
this?
frogs in water?
I feel like I should clarify. I've never done this. I've been told it doesn't work. I've read all about it.
So I guess really the only way to combat this is to take a proper look at it. To sit down and extrapolate that out. And so we're certainly happy to help. So if you're listening to this and you're not a client of ours, we'd be only too happy to meet with you. And in that first meeting, we actually go through these figures and actually like it's quite a high level meeting. We go through and we actually start looking at, okay, if you did nothing now, where would you be? Okay, is that going to work for you? For most people, we find it's not going to work for them. We start to dial in some different parameters here, like a change in the investment rate of return. Of course, we haven't even talked about this in these examples, but adding money into your superannuation and claiming as a tax deduction. Taking a proper look, a proper step back, and having a look at it and how that would play out.
And where that's an interesting conversation, I find for most people is that. And that's why the wording of your title of this podcast, investing is the worst form of retirement planning, because most people think I either have the choice to do nothing and keep doing what I'm doing now, or I invest my money. The reality is you are making a decision. You have got your money in superannuation. It is invested in some way. It is invested in some mix of asset classes. A decision has been made on that, whether by you or by your super fund. And every year that you leave that as it is, you are making a decision to make that that is your investment strategy. The strategy might be I'm just going to do what it is, but as you said, looking at these with people, there are times when people go, I'm willing to accept less income in retirement, or whatever the lever is that they can pull and say, I just want less volatility. I know that I have to give something up for that. That's fine. Where this is dangerous is the thing where it hasn't been decided or hasn't been thought about. The trade-offs haven't been discussed. It's just, I'm just going to let this roll along and get a 4% return and just hope for the best.
Yeah, that's right. No, good point to wrap up, I think. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening to the Money Over 50 podcast with Lighthouse Financial Advisors. We look forward to catching up again soon.